Good evening, and thank you for joining me for this final webinar in our research series. Doesn't feel like 5 minutes since we started them back in November. I was with Mr. Frank Skinner and my youngest, if you remember, so I had to pre-record my introduction. But as a BNMS member, I was able to access the recording. Those of you who joined me in Glasgow a couple of weeks ago will know that I've now handed over the presidential chain of office to the fabulous Sabina Dezerevich. But since these webinars were my baby, I wanted to host the final one, so she kindly agreed. And I know I say this every time, and that's because it's true every time. But for this last one, we really have a great session lined up for you. If you joined us for the early webinars, I hope you enjoyed the first 6 by Gary Cook, Maggie Cooper, James Ozabowski, Ian Newington, Juliana Maynard, and John Wadsley. Thank you again to all of them. For those of you who are joining for the first time, tonight's webinar, like the rest of the series, is open access, so they can be watched live for free. But if you or any of your colleagues would like to ask them later, as I did back in November, all our webinars are recorded and you can still access them now as a BNMS member benefit, and these can be found on our members page. If you're not a member, please have a think about joining us. I don't think you'll regret it. I never have. Membership costs around about the same as a large takeaway pizza, and that's according to my eldest, who has quite a few of them at uni. So I think that's money well spent, or have both if you like. Anyway, on to this evening's webinar. Tonight's presentation is entitled Creating Opportunities for Collaboration in Clinical Research, including BNMS Initiatives, and will be presented to you by Dr. Jennifer Young. Jen has recently joined Barts Cancer Institute, Queen Mary University of London, as a senior radiochemist and staff scientist. In this role, she will continue to work on the Radionuclides for Health initiative, which you'll hopefully have heard of. This is a collaboration between Queen Mary University of London and King's College London, with support from the UK National Nuclear Laboratory. The project advocates for the establishment of a stable UK supply of radionuclides and radiopharmaceuticals for health and medical use, especially for molecular radiotherapy, and has built a UK-wide network to further this aim. Over the last 18 months, she's been involved in delivering four of the medical radionuclides innovation projects funded by the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, including projects on the production of iodine-124 and astatine-211. Those of you who know Jen will already know how brilliant she is. She's contributed behind the scenes to so many things that impact nuclear medicine. Anything she gets involved with is always made better for her contribution. And I'd like to take this opportunity to say a personal thank you to Jen. Thank you, Jen, for all your support and the help you've given to us and to me. And as I've said before to you, you're a real asset to radiopharmacy and nuclear medicine as far as I'm concerned. And I'm sure as far as everyone's concerned. As usual, Jen's presentation will last roughly 30 to 40 minutes. And for those of you who are able to join us live, there will be the opportunity for you to ask questions at the end in our Q&A session, where she'll be joined by our panel of experts. The panel and members joining her this evening will be Dr. Maggie Cooper, Professor Vineet Prakash, and James Ozabowski, who you will, or some of these names you will already know from previous webinars. I'll tell you, as a reminder, a little bit about our panel. Those of you who attended I think it was the second webinar, will already know a little bit about Maggie Cooper since she delivered our second webinar and has also been a panel member. Maggie's worked as a radiopharmacist for more than 25 years, spending a career working both in NHS and academia as head of radiopharmacy hospitals like the Royal Free, at Barts and the Royal of Liverpool. And she's also carried out translational research in radiopharmacy at King's College London. Currently heading up the positron emission radiopharmaceutical laboratory at King's College London as a chemistry operations manager. I've known Maggie for most of these 25 years, and I've benefited greatly from the help and advice she willingly gives on research and on conducting trials. If you were at the earlier webinar, or the BNMS Awards dinner in Glasgow, where she won recently the Roll of Honour Award for outstanding contribution to nuclear medicine, you will know that Maggie is a bit of a superhero, and in fact now answers to the moniker Super Cooper. So it's official. You heard it here. Not first, you heard it here again. Jane Ozabowski is hopefully another face you'll recognise. She gave us an earlier, really good webinar on the introduction of new radionuclides in clinical trials. Her work's primarily in the preclinical area. She's specialised in radiolabeled peptides, antibodies, and other carriers for imaging, and she's particularly interested in bringing novel therapy radionuclides into clinical use. Jane leads a whole team of researchers and is also involved in the Radionuclides for Health initiative with Jen. Vineet Prakash is a first-time panel member, but will need no introduction for many of you. Vineet is an appointed professor and a dual-trained consultant in nuclear medicine and also a radionuclide radiologist. He's been a long-time supporter of the BNMS, not only as a council member, but also as an educational lead and a previous SEC chair, pulling together fantastic conference programs for us during that time. Vineet is a key member of the MRT Consortium, something which echoes his interest and experience in cancer diagnosis and treatment. He's actively involved in research in the field of hybrid nuclear medicine imaging and therapy, and most recently has been appointed as Deputy for Research. Although he ended up in Surrey, he is another Yorkshire export, so the lad has done well. I hope you'll agree. So another fantastic panel of experts in the field at your disposal once again on a Tuesday evening. I'd like to thank Jen and all our panel members for giving up their valuable time this evening to share their experiences with us all this one last time. As always, to keep things simple, we're using a Q&As tab, so if you wish to ask a question, please use this tab to enter it. Don't use the chat function because they might get missed. You can use chat for general comments, information or feedback. At the end of the presentation, I will read out the questions logged in the Q&A section on your behalf to the panel. I'd like to thank our sponsors for one last time, SciTech, Curium and Siemens, who've helped make all of these evenings possible. I hope you find this final research webinar, both interesting and useful. I'm a little sad they're coming to an end. I hope you've enjoyed them as much as I have. We're going to be running more webinars on different topics from the autumn onwards, which Sabina will be chairing, so watch this space. So there we have it. Without further ado, and for the last time, I'll pass you over to Dr. Jennifer Young. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tilly. That was a really lovely introduction, and I'm really pleased to be here this evening. I'll just share my screen. Hopefully you can all see that now. Brilliant. So again, yes, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to speak to all of you today. And also thank you to the sponsors for this BNMS webinar series. I'm going to be talking about creating opportunities for collaboration in clinical research, including BNMS initiatives. And as I said, the focus of my talk today is all about collaboration. Sorry, I'm just trying to move my slides on. It doesn't seem to be going today. Okay, there we are. As I said, the focus of my talk is all about collaboration in research, and I think that collaboration is really key to effective research. As Gilly mentioned, I'm a researcher from Queen Mary University of London. I was previously working at King's College London, and a lot of the work I've done has been about radionuclides for Health UK. A key part of this work has been about building networks and building collaborations. And I know many of you have been supporters of this work, and I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for your engagement. Without this, we wouldn't have seen the progress that there's been in this area. I think it's clear that there is strength in having teams that bring together different skills and disciplines towards a shared goal. And this is particularly important in nuclear medicine clinical trials, the topic for this webinar series, as it is such a multidisciplinary field. What I also think is clear is that bringing the multidisciplinary community of nuclear medicine together is one of the things that BNMS is particularly good at. Additionally, there has been a number of recent BNMS initiatives that have strengthened this link to research and encouraged collaboration and sharing of expertise. In particular, today, I want to highlight the work of the BNMS Research Champions, and so I'll provide you with an overview of their activities in this talk. Of course, this series of seminars has also been a key way that we are sharing knowledge and encouraging research within nuclear medicine through the BNMS. And as we come to the close of this series of seminars, I thought it would be useful to reflect and review the previous talks and take some of the wisdom of the other speakers who have all in different ways highlighted the need for collaboration when conducting research in clinical trials. As Gilly's already mentioned, there has already been 6 previous talks in this series, and all of these are available online through the BNMS website. So in summary, summarising these different talks, the first talk was in the series was from Professor Gary Cook, who discussed the process for setting up a clinical trial in the UK and the regulatory requirements that govern this. Key points he made were the importance of ensuring that there are appropriate approvals from bodies such as the MHRA, from REC, from RSAC, and that the IRAS form is vital in coordinating all of these submissions. With regards to collaboration, it was clear that there needs to be strong communication between the research team who's going to be conducting the clinical trial and the R&D department with the hospital, as well as with any services that the clinical trial requires, such as imaging and pathology. A particular area of importance was in understanding the availability of the radio tracer you would be using in the study, which requires an early and open dialogue and communication with the radiopharmacy or PET centre that would be providing that tracer. This is, of course, very well linked to the second talk in the series, which was from Dr. Maggie Cooper, who discussed the process for validation and then the production of novel GMP standard radio tracers for clinical trials. It was highlighted that it's not only the process to manufacture that has to be validated, but also all of the QC methods developed and validated as well. She broke down all the steps needed and therefore why setting up a product can take a reasonable amount of time. In terms of collaborations, it was discussed that the UK Radiopharmacy Group, which is also under the umbrella of the BNMS, and also the UK PET Chemistry Group, both provide communities of experts who can help technology transfer between sites, and also highlighted the importance of thinking nationally or regionally rather than just what your own hospital site can deliver. Maggie will also be joining us on the panel this evening. The third talk in the series was by Professor James Osobowski, who I work closely with, and she discussed the opportunities around molecular radiotherapy and particularly around the alpha emitters lead-212 and astatine-211, as these are exciting new alpha emitter therapies but have short half-lives. Because of these short half-lives, these radionuclides need UK infrastructure to support clinical trials, and collaboration on this front has been very important, as there needs to be a cohesive message from the UK community about the vision for the UK in this space and the UK's needs. This project has involved working with a really wide range of stakeholders and also collaboration with both national labs and the government. This has been a new way of working, and it's been important in shaping the national agenda on these things. There's a white paper summarising the opportunity and investment needs identified by Radionuclides for Health UK and all of the stakeholders we've engaged with. And if you're interested, the link is going to be posted in the chat. Jane is also the BNMS Research and Innovation Chair and will be joining us on the panel this evening. The fourth talk in the series was on the funding and support available for the National Institute for Health and Care Research, the NIHR, from Dr. Ian Newington, who's the Assistant Director of Innovation. He spoke about the role of NIHR, their scope of funding clinical evaluations of a technology or of a diagnostic. He also talked about the key things to consider when designing a clinical study or a trial and looking for the right mechanisms to fund such a trial. He also discussed the different opportunities for obtaining funding through NIHR itself, such as calls for the Invention for Innovation, Research for Patient Benefit Programme, Efficiency and Mechanism Evaluation, and the more classic Health Technology Assessment. He then also discussed the best ways to engage with NIHR. An important point around collaboration from this talk was the importance of collaborating with patients when scoping and developing a trial, and how NIHR can help to facilitate this through their patient groups and also the patient engagement in clinical development scheme. The fifth talk was from Juliana Maynard from the Medicines Discovery Catapult, who are also running the National PET Imaging Platform, which is supporting UK activities around total body PET and PET CT more generally. The Medicines Discovery Catapult worked to place two MRC-funded total body PET scanners in the UK. One is now hosted at KCL in collaboration with Imperial, and the other at the University of Edinburgh in collaboration with the University of Glasgow. She spoke about how the total body PET obtained funding through the MRC and the UKRI infrastructure funding, and what research councils are looking for when investing in research infrastructure. Juliana really highlighted the importance of a national research collaboration, and that this accelerates outputs by fostering knowledge, exchange, enhancing innovation, and improving the quality of the research conducted. She also highlighted the importance of working closely with regulators to highlight the barriers to innovation and move to overcome these together, which is why MPIP has created a trusted advisory group in partnership with the MHRA. This wasn't mentioned in Juliana's talk in the series, but at the BNMS this year, they launched the first paper from this group. And if you're interested in reading more about that, the link is also in the chat. I think it's really important for anybody that does work with the MHRA. The sixth talk focused on leading a multi-centre MRT trial and was by Professor John Wadsley, who's a consultant clinical oncologist at Weston Park Cancer Centre and we're one of the NIHR national speciality leads for cancer. He spoke about the importance of conducting multi-centre trials to answer the currently unanswered questions in molecular radiotherapy, including the best treatment schedule, the best activity, the role of dosimetry, and how we can use combinations of therapies. It was also important that when you're doing multi-centre clinical trials, this allows you to get the right number of patients recruited in order to get strong results, and also demonstrates the widespread applicability of the results that you do gather when contrasted to a single site trial. Of course, when you're doing multi-centre trials, you need to build collaborations and a strong team and include patient involvement. So all of these items were also highlighted. He also gave specific examples of how this was done through the telemetry trial for which he was chief investigator. So I hope that provided you with a useful summary of the series so far and has demonstrated how across all of these topics, collaboration has been really important and is really key across all of the facets of research. Again, all of the talks are available online, so if you've missed any of them, you can go back and watch them. So now what I'm going to do is to move on to the activities that BNMS are doing in research and demonstrate how these are also strengthening collaboration. The BNMS active engagement in research has been strengthened recently by the publication of the new research strategy in 2024, with these efforts led by Professor Sabina Dzarovic. This document provides a framework for how the BNMS will work to improve translation of cutting-edge nuclear medicine, to assist in the implementation of the state-of-the-art multimodality technologies, and to enhance multi-centre clinical trials for patient benefits. An important part of this strategy is highlighting the stakeholders that are in this and making sure that they're engaged. Of course, in the centre of the stakeholder map is the interests of patients and also of the BNMS members. And then, as you can see, others coming off include the basic science researchers, industry, charities, bodies such as the NIHR and the National PET Imaging Platform. So working with these stakeholders is going to be really important, and it has already been done in developing this strategy. The objectives of the research strategy were to enhance radionuclide research delivery, develop expertise and infrastructure to deliver research in the UK, leading to service improvement and better care for patients. Also to work with the professional and national bodies involved in research, as well as the UK colleges and charities and the national and international nuclear medicine societies. Also to build up an evidence base for new radionuclide molecular diagnostic and therapeutic procedures, to set research priorities and objectives, and developing multi-center studies. So we'll talk more about the progress on that in a minute. And then to involve patients and public in its research strategy. I'm sure you'll all agree that these are all important aims, and ones that are really worth working towards. The governance for this is through the Research Committee, which reports to the BNMS Council. You can also see that a very important part of this is the Research Champions Network. This was formed in 2021, and it's a network of BNMS members and co-opted additional members with interest and expertise in research. This team also gets input from other national stakeholders and patients, as well as the Industry Academic Forum, which was initiated in 2023, and I'll also talk more about in a minute. This, however, is just the simplified outline. The full governance map is actually here, showing additional links into the BNMS MRT consortium and also enhanced PPI links as well, so patient and public involvement links. Just wanted to also highlight that the chair of the Research and Innovation Committee is also the chair of the Research Champions Network, and that the chair is in place for 3 years. The way that it works is that it's been decided it's useful to have both a scientist and a medical clinical person on the leadership team, and so that's how the grouping is decided as well. So I hope that you all know that previously the BNMS Research Chair was Professor Sabina Dzarovic, who is now our BNMS President. As I'm sure you all know, Sabina is a consultant nuclear medicine physician at University Hospitals NHS Sussex Foundation Trust, Brighton and Sussex Medical School. The Deputy Chair was Professor Phil Glower from King's College London, who is Professor of Imaging Chemistry. And I just wanted to take the time and opportunity to thank them for their efforts and vision for this work and the research strategy and the progress that they have already made in putting research into the culture and strategy of the BNMS under Gilly's leadership. I'm sure that although Sabina has moved on from this role in particular, she is still going to be pushing research as the president of BNMS. So now the baton has moved on from Sabina and Phil to Jane and Vineet. Professor Jane Sosbowski is from Bart's Cancer Institute, Queen Mary University of London. She's Professor of Radionuclide Imaging and Therapy, and she is the new chair of the Research and Innovation Committee. And as we've said, will join us on the panel this evening. The Deputy Chair is Dr. Vineet Prakash, who is a consultant radiologist and nuclear medicine physician at the Royal Surrey County NHS Foundation Trust, and will also be joining us on the panel this evening. So want to take the opportunity to wish them well in the new roles, and also we'll be excited to hear where they are going to take this going forward. So let me tell you a little bit more about the role of the Research Champions and that network. The network meet twice a year online, and the role of the Research Champions is to facilitate links between researchers and future active professional members and trainees of the BNMS. Also to support members and workforce and encourage collaborative working within and across regional and national networks, to set the objectives for research priorities, to lead the Research Champions specific projects and work collaboratively with those, to contribute to the cutting edge research session at the BNMS annual spring meeting, to lead on BNMS registries for observational research studies and prospective multi-centre clinical data for audit and quality improvement purposes, promoting trainees' participation in research, and promote awareness of the needs of a database of clinical trials in nuclear medicine. So I hope that gives you a flavour of the activities. There's obviously a lot that the research champions get involved with and lots of different interests. I've been part of this since the start, and it's great to see the enthusiasm from all the members and the progress that's already been made. So now I'm going to go into some more detail about some of those initiatives that you may not be aware of. So one of the important initiatives from the Research Champions Network is the Industry Academic Forum, which again meets online twice a year. This has been established as a platform for exchanging research ideas and for setting up investigator-initiated industry-supported projects and research programs. It's been really well attended by industry and by researchers and the wider BNMS community. So I wanted to say thank you very much for all of those of you that have contributed. And also wanted to just give you a flavour for the meetings and what happened in the last forum. So the last forum was held in January 2025, and it included presentations about 4 different topics. The first being around extravasation monitoring and using the Lucerno LARA system for this. There was also discussion around zirconium-89 girentuximab, which is one of the TLEX clinical trials. Also around fluorine-18 FDG in the management of cervical cancer and the opportunities there. And then we were also able to get an update on SheCat supply from GE Healthcare. So I think it's always a really valuable discussion, and it's great to see industry working closely with researchers on topics such as these. So would really encourage you to sign up if you're interested in either presenting or attending in these types of sessions. So another activity that you might have been aware of if you attended the BNMS a couple of weeks ago, the spring meeting, this is the introduction of the power pitches, which happened during the research cutting edge session. These have been introduced since 2023, and the power pitches are just 3 minutes long, but they give the audience an exciting overview of the newest projects that are coming through and what might be coming through in the next few years. The idea for this session was that the work can still be underdeveloped and may not have all of the conclusions yet, but you still want to share the fact that the research is happening and get people excited about it. So it was a really great session this year, and I hope many of you attended. And there was a really wide range of topics covered. And I'm just going to show you some of those topics, hopefully to whet your appetite a bit. One of the projects was around deep learning and neural networks to enhance respiratory motion during FDG PET. Another was on the Stampede 2 trial. So that's a follow-up using lutetium PSMA 617 phase 3 trial. There was a talk around a new receptor, CCK2, and using theragnostics for that. A feasibility study about inhaling FDG in lung cancer patients. A focus on using nuclear medicine in cardiac amyloidosis. A supramolecular technology called cage tag, which allows radiopharmaceutical development. doing data-driven approach to minimize the extravasation in nuclear medicine, advances in GU imaging with and treatment with radiopharmaceuticals, and also the excision study, looking at the diagnostic performance of high-res PET CT in determining margin status in cancer resection. So I hope that you found something on that on list that is interesting to you, and we'd encourage you to start thinking up your power pitches for next year already. I think it's also important, we saw in the strategy document that one of the key parts of being in the Research Champions Network is also to highlight priority areas of research for the BNMS. And so this is one of the activities that's happened through the Champions Network, and it has specific assigned champions against these different activities. Just to note that there is no priority order within this list. It's not like the ones at the top are the highest priority for the community and the ones at the bottom are lower. They're all equal within this list. So what really happens is these assigned champions work on these projects, and they report back during the BNMS Research Champions meetings. So we expect this list to continue to be reviewed and evolve with time, but you can already see a really interesting and wide range of interests. I think it's also useful to present this to kind of know what research is being done and see the opportunities for collaboration, and also opportunities to take learnings from previous studies if you've worked on something that kind of has an overlap in the past. So as well as this, other activities that have come out of the network have included a Horizon scanning paper, so looking at what clinical trials are in progress globally, what we're running in the UK, and what we need to prepare ourselves for going forward. And this is being led by James Ospowski. There's also a piece of work around a dosimetry study. So putting together a grant application for a study looking at systematically collecting dosimetry data and then the information about the correlation with clinical outcomes and cost effectiveness. And this is being led by Glenn Flux. So, of course, the topic of this talk was all about collaboration. I think I've shown you that through all of these initiatives, there is obviously a lot of collaboration involved, and it's all about bringing people together. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that the BNMS Research Champions are not doing it alone. They are also interacting heavily with other groups as well, who also provide a lot of expertise into the group. So in particular, there is a lot of cross-communication and cross-representation with the BNMS Molecular Radiotherapy Consortium, and research is reported in both directions from this group. There's also interaction with the UK radiopharmacy group, so especially when the research is underpinned by new radiopharmaceuticals. Again, with IDUG as well, so there's again kind of cross-pollination about research projects in this group. And there's also been discussions with the NIHR, MRT, National Research Access Network Group, and the Imaging Group. And as was discussed particularly in Juliana's talk, the National PET Imaging Platform is also an organisation that can support the activities of the BNMS, particularly around using the new total body PET scanners. So I hope that I have highlighted how collaboration is key to effective research, how BNMS has an important role to play in bringing people together, and that it has a new research strategy and has established the Research Champions. So if you're here because you're interested in research, please, I would encourage you to join the BNMS research activities. So if you are interested, how do you do this? The ways that you can get involved. So the kind of smallest commitment is around submitting to the cutting edge research session at BNMS. This is obviously a really interesting and lively session last month when we had that in Glasgow. And if you've got a project that is under development now, please think about submitting it to this session. But then the other ways are if you actually want to join these groups that meet more regularly, that's the Industry Academic Forum and the BNMS Champions Network. You can sign up through the BNMS website. So if you just go to the Research Champions Network page, where you can also find links to all of the information that I've talked about today. If you scroll to the bottom of that, you can then fill in a little form that gets you in contact with the right people and gets you on the mailing list to be included in these initiatives. So yes, I'd really encourage you to do that. So really, then I wanted to say thank you to everybody that has already been involved in Research Champions, and those of you that I know continue to work in this area. I also particularly wanted to thank everybody who has already contributed to this webinar research series, and of course everybody online. Thank you for listening today. So I hope we can have an interesting discussion about research within the BNMS. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jen. That was a really good overview and a nice way to finish off our series, to sort of look back and reflect on all the different fantastic talks we've had, and just to tease out the sort of salient points was really helpful. Thank you, and certainly giving people pointers about how they can get more involved, which is essentially what we're hoping to achieve through this series. We've got a question in the chat. I've got a few questions as well. So Glenn Flux, who you may well know, I think all of us know Glenn with two N's. Brilliant. Thanks, Jen. He's just wondering, this is a hugely complicated field with few patients and little academic research funding. Different stakeholders have very different aims, from drug development to clinical practice. There are industry and academic priorities. What do you think is necessary for research harmonisation? Do we need to learn more about what others do? Also, oh, yes, thank you. Thank you, Glenn. Thanks to brilliant Jilly who got this going. Little thank you for me, but bigger thank you for you guys. So what do you think we need to do to harmonise the research?
Yeah, okay, I can take that one to start with, but I'm sure everybody else will probably have comments on that as well. I think there is something that's really important about understanding all of the different multidisciplinary parts of doing a study, and making sure that if you're planning something, that you include all of those different parts and get the most information that you can out of any trials that you do. So I think that is something that we can only do by understanding what other people's needs are, and kind of factoring that in as well. Yeah, I also think that that it's nice if we can think about what we think might be the goals for the UK, and the BNMS is obviously a organisation that kind of represents what would be good for nuclear medicine in the UK. So I think the BNMS is a good forum to put forward kind of a vision for where we want to get to, and to utilise that in order to work forward. So yeah, people do have different goals, but I hope in general they would all be towards benefit for UK patients and benefit for the UK nuclear medicine community. So I think hopefully we can focus on that.
Thank you. Clinical trial work is so important, particularly in gathering evidence for new traces. I'm thinking about recent experiences with getting NICE approval. The evidence is really, really strong evidence is so crucial. So do you think we need more centres to be involved, or have we got enough centres involved? And if we do need more, how can we achieve this? How can we break down those barriers and get more people and more centres to sign up to this sort of work, especially when they're busy with operational things? It's hard to juggle. I don't know who to direct that to. So I'm just going to sort of say to all the panel members, have you got any thoughts on that?
Well, maybe I
say
shall
something.
go.
Go on,
first.
Maggie.
First.
You go.
I mean, I think from a radiopharmaceutical point of view, you know, because I'm a radiopharmacist, and I know that the supply of the radiopharmaceuticals is absolutely key for some of these studies. Okay, some of the radio traces or the therapeutic radiopharmaceuticals you can get from companies, and if you can do that, then that's great. But if we're trying to get novel radio traces off the ground, then we really need to help each other. And I think the UK Radiopharmacy Group is increasingly trying to support other centres to try and get up to scratch, for example, or be able to do new things. So I think we just need to be that much more collaborative and help each other. I think that there's a real appetite to do that now in the UK. Maybe in the past it's been a little bit more competitive, but I think that the collaborative approach is probably the way forward. And I think that sharing of things like documentations or methods, or just even having meetings together for people who are involved in the similar trials can help to make sure that you're all aligned and you're doing things in the same way, and you're doing things to really high standards. So I think that's really important. Jane, I shall let you speak now.
I anticipate Jane's just been asked to move to a different location, maybe. So she might not be able to speak right now.
Maybe I could come in here, Maggie, while we give Jane some time. I just want to echo that at a time of major NHS transformation, where all resources are stretched, we need to collaborate now more than ever. And I think working together at a time of austerity and NHS transformation is how we continue to build upon the foundation of good work that Phil and Sabina started. To answer the question about harmonization, I think we only need to look at some of the existing projects of how that was achieved. And we have one of the projects that Jen mentioned about dosimetry, led by none other than Glenn Flux, which is a very important group working on a program grant application, systematically collecting dosimetry data across many different sites to inform and educate commissioners as well as stakeholders on the clinical outcomes and cost effectiveness, which I think is one area Jane and I are aligned that we need to do more meaningful research where we can help inform and educate the country as a whole, especially at a time of austerity. And we'd like to continue to build upon the good work that has been started and finish that work. Also, Jane will speak in a moment, I'm sure, about the horizon scanning paper, which helps us to rationalize which clinical trials are in progress globally, which ones are relevant to our country in the UK, so we don't get left behind and we feel an important part of the global research community. Jane, this is called padding whilst I prepare the floor for you, so over to you.
Somebody came and started talking to me. Yeah, I think that what Vanita said is very important. You know, the UK is our research environment, and we want to make research work for the UK and for UK patients. And it may not be the same in other countries where they have different environments where they can perhaps treat patients that aren't in clinical trials, for instance. We are limited in some ways, due to some NICE restrictions, perhaps and commissioning restrictions that we may have within the NHS. So we need to work within that system and make it work as best we possibly can. And this involves us finding evidence for things that we think that this country should adopt. So it's really up to us to say, if we think there is an intervention that we think is important, then we need to find the evidence in order to convince our commissioning bodies that actually these things should be adopted. And this may involve something like, a change in patient management, or an intervention that prolongs survival. These types of evidence that will take us forward to be able to adopt new imaging procedures, to be able to adopt new therapy procedures, etc. And we need to kind of focus on the things that we think can have the most benefit for UK patients. So we do need to be a bit focused. As Glenn said, there's not a great deal of funding around, and sometimes our aims in academia are not as maybe different to those in industry. Industry are very focused, and they're very good at being extremely focused about doing one particular thing in a trial. And we may think that, there are other things that could also be tested that are perhaps neglected in the initial trials. But, we understand that industry need to get to a certain place, but it may be up to us to add these different things on to the trials landscape and do kind of the individual trials that are needed. That's difficult to do if the agents aren't in clinical use, in routine clinical use. So we really need industry, and we can work together with industry to get these agents into routine clinical use. So then we can test, all sorts of different things once they are in routine clinical use. So I think we really need to work with industry on this, and it's really a symbiotic relationship. We all have the same aims. We have the aim to see patients treated, and to see them surviving longer, to see them getting their scans quicker and more efficiently. So, as Jen says, collaboration is very important, and we need to see how we can make the system that we have work for us in the UK.
Thank you. I think collaboration is like we said throughout this whole evening is so crucial. I was just thinking while you were talking, and as I mentioned, sort of juggling the operational sort of needs of your service with the desire to do research, and it goes a little bit beyond that, because we're looking at doing a trial that uses gallium, and it means giving over a gallium manufacturing session to trial work. And because you're having to use the trial vial of the material, which is an IMP at the moment, we can't use that for other patients. So it's collaboration with sort of the colleagues in the PET Centre and in the whoever is leading on the trials is just really key, because you'll have operational expectations in terms of how many doses you're going to be making for your clinical patients. That's quite tricky. I was going to ask a question of Maggie. So I mentioned the change in the law that's coming up next year, which is going to remove the requirement to have an IMP license when you're from a manufacturer of diagnostic radiopharmaceuticals for clinical trial. Do you think that's going to have a big impact in terms of uptake of trials?
I think it is important, but I'm not sure how big an impact it will have, because there's still the requirement to follow the full GMP, and that makes it still somewhat more restrictive than the rest of the European colleagues. However, having to have a QP for release, having to have an IMP manufacturing license, that really is a big challenge. So I really hope that it can. And we've seen many more departments around the country getting, for example, gallium service off the ground, and I think that there's that gallium theranostic partner type approach is probably the thing that's going to be most common. And so, yeah, I hope so, but I'm a little bit cautious, I would say, because there's still this really strong requirement to meet GMP. And it's like you said, there's also this clinical demand. I face it the same with me having to make FDG every day. If you having to give up a slot for making a 1 patient dose for something for a clinical trial, then you're stopping maybe 2 or 3 other patients having a gallium dotatate or whatever scan. So it's balancing that whole thing, isn't it? It's really quite difficult, and I think that's still going to be a challenge for departments, just in terms of capacity and stuff. I mean, how do you face it, Gilly? I mean, send the question back to you. Do you think in your department that you would be more inclined to do more studies? I mean, they've always sort of relaxed the regulation a little bit in the short term.
Yeah, they have relaxed it a little bit. We are about to start a trial that is, that the company have basically said the gallium product is an IMP, although it's being used within the scope of its normal indication. So it's a bit like, if you were doing a bone scan as part of a trial, you wouldn't make a special bone kit. You would just send them across incrementally across a bone imaging agent, and they would take a dose out of that for the trial patient, because they're using it to assess, chemotherapy, whatever. So it's a little bit frustrating that something is being used within its clinical parameters is designated an IMP, and therefore I have to use a special vial and give over that manufacturing session. However, we are looking to expand our service. We bought, I think we have bought one of those Elugen. That means we can do the routine elution of the gallium out of hours or over the weekend, so we don't have to give over a session for that. So I've kind of said, well, then I'm not taking sessions away from anybody. I'm just, if the session that has freed up, I'm likely to use that for the trial work. And maybe what I'll do is say that's that session for gallium particularly. I mean, research obviously isn't limited to gallium, but there is an area where there's a lot more likely to be research that requires radiopharmacy time. That will I'm thinking that might always be a research session. So, rather than giving it away and then having to take it back, I'll just keep that earmarked for research purposes. See how that goes. So that was one approach that I thought of.
Yeah, so thinking a little bit more outside the box and trying to find solutions to enable research to happen within the facility. We're talking about collaboration. I mean, is there opportunity, in those cases with those types of products to do more than 1 patient? Maybe have a patient from another center come to your hospital and do more than 1 patient from a single vial because it's IMP, or is that still a restriction?
I haven't looked into that particularly. I suppose with the trial, it depends if they're specifically saying it's a single patient dose only. That might make it a little bit more tricky to do that. It's not a bad idea, it's a good idea if that's a possibility. But then I suppose it then comes also down to scanning time, because they'd have to be scanned at our hospital. Jane.
I just wanted to say that, across the UK, there is still a great need for clinical trials traces, manufacturing of clinical trials traces, particularly in the PET side. So with NPIP, then there has been, increased emphasis on making more radio tracers for clinical trials and for clinical work, more novel tracers. But even, just routine PET tracers, for instance, that aren't, there is no good access to them in the UK. And, thinking about the UK as a whole, how can we highlight this as a community, how far behind the UK is lagging in this area of, manufacturing of PET radiopharmaceuticals, or, of, novel radiopharmaceuticals, and look at the landscape as a whole. And really, work as an organization to highlight this and bring this need up continually to, the governments, to, the NHS, to, and continue to, apply for grants, or, lobby for more funding to come into this area, because so that we can really support each other in the community, and really work as one unit. I mean, there has always been this kind of traditional split between PET and radiopharmacy. You know, Maggie on this panel is running a PET center at the moment, and Julie, you're a radiopharmacist, more of a traditional radiopharmacist, but you know, these activities have always been kind of split up. And you know, if we look at nuclear medicine, everything starts with the agent. You know, if we can get this right, then we can really potentiate, you know, the research in the UK. So yeah, I think that if we can, you know, work across these boundaries and start talking, instead of, you know, just radiopharmacists talking to each other, radiochemists talking to each other, but actually, you know, talking together and saying, actually, we face pretty much the same issues. You know, can we work together in order to say, you know, what have we got in the UK? How can we use it better? What do we need more funding for? MPIP is doing a brilliant job of this. And, you know, there are others in the PET community who also, you know, been raising these issues for years. And, but, you know, I think I feel like we could be more united in this kind of mission to improve the situation in the UK.
Thank you, Jane. I've just noticed that before we finish, there's another question popped up from Edith Gallagher. Thank you, Edith. From personal experience, some clinical trial monitors are unfamiliar with the intricacies of PET-CT manufacturing of radiopharmaceuticals and don't understand that it's not just space on the scanner that is required for trial patients, but also radiopharmacy manufacturing time. I think that's a very good comment and links into some of the things that we've been saying. So, just as a last sort of discussion thing for the last few minutes, we've talked about the BNMS strategy, and I really love what you said about breaking down barriers, and that really fits in with what the NHS is meant to be, you know, moving towards with the establishment of, you know, in ICBs and system-wide approaches. So factoring all that in, where do you think the BNMS should go next? Because you're new head of our research committee. Now we have a strategy and we have research champions. Where do we go from here?
Great. So I think, you know, we have one of the best ways of bringing what we want to do to the attention of the powers that be, or the research community, or the funders, is actually to design trials and apply for funding. You know, we've been given some excellent routes to funding. We have, you know, the NIHR is an excellent route to funding that I feel has not been exploited enough by the nuclear medicine community. We need to work with the, you know, medical oncologists and clinical oncologists, and, you know, to bring interesting trials to the community. And, you know, our members are on the ground. They know the issues. They know where management could be improved. They know where, you know, essentially a very simple trial would change things for quite a few patients. We need the BNMS members to bring these ideas forward and say, we think this is an area that would really help the UK. And then we need to agree on which trials would be the most helpful for the UK, and then actually put these forward for funding. I think we've got to start doing the things that we want to do. We need to have good trial design, you know, ensure that we have, you know, good statistical analyses. We have, you know, all of the things that are needed to have the credibility, you know, that we need in order to get these trials funded, and you know, move these things forward. You know, so I think if we can identify a few key trials, and you know, they've been doing it in the dosimetry community, and I think that's absolutely fantastic, then we could start to, you know, basically, you know, practicing what we preach, basically.
Thank you, Jane. I'm going to have to bring things to a close there because we're going to run out of time. So I'd like to thank our speaker, Dr. Jennifer Young, and all our panel members for providing us with a really informative and interesting hour this evening. Feels a little bit sad not to be saying until next time, but all things must come to an end. And I hope you have, until the next series of webinars, please all of you have a wonderful summer. And finally, thank you to you all, and goodbye.
Thanks, Gilly.